Okay. Bump. All right. Now I'm also going to. I guess I'm gonna try live on YouTube this time since we had so many problems with the Facebook last night. I'm gonna try live on YouTube. Okay, so now it says it's streaming live on YouTube. Zadity dot dibbity dot. Okay, all right, here we go. All right. You gotta be kidding me. Hold on, y'all. Now all of a sudden my camera's tripping. Okay, bam. All right. Christopher Muhammad joining that. Okay, so as we've done before now, y'all, you know, most folks have been here before. So we want to have this focused on you know, episode. We try to be episodic with it, right? So we want to follow the episode. Tonight's episode was episode 4, which was aptly titled "The Badge of Shame."
The Badge of Shame, Jamarhl.
You know, this stuff, not for nothing. Now that I've watched the whole series, I'm probably like on my 3rd time with the whole series and then individually watching them again. It's also getting creative juices flowing because this whole thing, like, you know, this would be something that like Biggie or somebody would turn into a whole album. You know what I mean?
Real.
These it's crazy. And once again, kudos to the people who put it together because it's so artfully done and it tells this story. And even, you know, the titling of each episode kind of sets the stage for what's popping. But you know, first of all, of course, thanks everybody for showing up tonight. Any downtime that you have tonight, if you got other devices open or if you happen to have your laptop with you or whatever, please, you know, keep tweeting this out, sharing it. You know what I mean? Da. You know, we're already starting off with 19 folks already, so that's good. Majority of whom have been here before. Blah, blah, blah. But all right, so once again, we want to stick to the script. We want to talk about episode 4 tonight, which was definitely a barn burner. And episode 4, Badge of Shame, starts off with, you know, some of the B-roll footage, but the most memorable thing of that first thing is the imagery of Sean getting pulled out that paddy wagon, right? They don't call them paddy wagons anymore, right? Because I don't know if y'all know, paddy is supposed to be a racially charged term against the Irish. So they to be called paddy wagons, and now I guess whatever they call them, transports or whatever they do. But back in our days, of course, that was the paddy wagon.
Right.
And you know, and that was not a comfortable ride either, by the way. Right. steel everywhere on the inside. And as we learned from Baltimore too,
It'll kill you.
they would give you what they would call a bumpy ride, and judging from how the other folks got out the back of there, his face ain't look busted up. But I find, these are the types of things, because I do got a list of questions. I find it very hard to believe that in the process of this entire thing, none of them cops put their hands on him. Because if they felt like he killed it, if he was a cop killer, if that's what they felt like at the time, you're gonna at least get a couple of elbows in the ribs. You know what I mean?
Real.
So and when you're driving in those paddy wagons and whatnot, those were the times that those types of things happened. But seeing him come out of that paddy wagon bent up and whatnot, and then of course, remember, this is also the introduction of our Dominican brother, right? Who, if he would have went to jail, his nickname would have been Smiley. This dude is Smile, right? But he was like, I knew those faces. That's the dude who tied me up, and that's the other dude. They ransacked my apartment. And then of course I gotta let somebody else in. And then of course he goes into telling his his whole story. And they break into that vignette. And like so many of our brothers and sisters, he came here from DR, came to Boston, right? He's actually one of the, I would say, earlier ones, because that was the 80s.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Came here, as he said, with the dreams of a bunch of young Dominican boys. He was about to come here and bust that little white ball with that stick, you know what I mean, and get his baseball on. You know what I mean? So that was his big American dream, and coming here and boop. That doesn't work out, of course. He ends up getting the job, as he said, the guys who would park the planes, right? And he's just working a job, and he was still happy to be here. Had a good job, had an apartment. Look, he was living in the Fenway. What? You know what I mean? Had him a girlfriend, whatnot. Had him a little car. You know what I mean? And jumps out the car, and them dirty cops got the pistol in his head. And the first thing he thinks is, they're like, give me the keys. Here you go. First thing he thinks is like, yo, I got $40 in my pockets. He think he getting jacked. And he was.
Yeah. He really was.
He really was. Jacking of a different kind. So, obviously they went up into the crib, and we know what happened there. But we could stop there, because the thing, it goes back and forth in timeline. But that's a good chunk right there, I think, to kind of open up the discussion right there. And once again, the rules here are, don't be shy. Closed mouths don't get fed. All right? Don't be disruptive, but please add on with points. Your points are wanted. We want you to interact and talk about, particularly, if you've been watching this with us, we want to hear your thoughts and your questions even about this phenomenal series, Trial 4, about the tragedy that occurred to my brother Sean Ellis on Netflix right now. So anybody else, please chime in. Remember to unmute yourself if you haven't.
I guess I'll start. Just being Dominican myself, and I came in those years. I came in '87. I know the plight of my country. You know what I mean? It's a developing country, but even seeing that, the difference, how way they treated the Dominican dude versus Sean, and even the similarities, obviously. The similarities are there, but I don't know. I just feel that we will never really understand what a Black man goes through, what an American Black man goes through. You know what I'm saying? And he was able to still come up, I noticed the difference in that. I just do not understand why even after that, they still find issues. And obviously I know why, but they still find issues with Sean. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just feel that this was just ridiculous. You know, and so many similar cases are still out there.
I think
It's
going back,
disturbing.
I think going back to what I was saying yesterday, I mean,
Hold on, pause.
okay.
Clap for fixing the mic.
Yeah, I got on another Zoom after the one last night, and they was like, your mic sounds all messed up, and I was like, all right. So I rebooted my computer and it went back to normal. But I think you know, all the facts that were even presented in this case, I think that there's still more about this whole situation with Brother Sean that hasn't been exposed, and that's why the cover-up still continues, because this goes deeper than just the parties that we saw that were exposed in this Netflix series.
Right.
Absolutely. They're holding on to their story like a steel trap. Like the irony, like there was so many ironies in this episode. This is one of the most explosive episodes, in my opinion, because it really exposes the corruption, the so-called corruption of Brazel, Robertson, and Sarah. Brazel flips, right? Turns state's evidence on Robertson and Sarah, and then the then captain of detectives, what's his name, McNeely or something like that,
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna tell you right now with his old Ed McNeely.
Ed McNeely, former detective Ed McNeely says that yeah, Robertson and Sarah were involved in left-handed business. It doesn't make us proud. It makes everybody look bad, but there was no connection between their corruption and their ability to investigate Mulligan's case.
Said you won't find a cleaner case than Mulligan.
So my question is he said, and because they were investigated, you know what I'm saying, they're not gonna tell me that they're investigated. So my question is, how can Robertson, Brazel, and Sarah be corrupt and investigating Mulligan's case, and there's no connection, that the corruption didn't spill over to that investigation, and of course the feds are not going to tell you anything. You know that there's no corruption in Mulligan's case. You stand on that, but you didn't know that Robertson, Brazel, and Sarah was corrupt. How did, like, both things cannot exist at the same time? Like, I don't even, I guess they just really feel like we just a public that's dumbed down and we can't read between the lines, or none of us has never lied to our parents before. I mean, just the audacity is just incredible to me.
And once again, to go back to dope cops investigating a homicide. And it just happened to be corrupt dope cops. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man.
But
who were all in business together. Come on.
But there's no funny business in the corrupt. There's no funny business in investigating Mulligan's case, but yeah, we didn't know they was corrupt. Like, you can't have both.
Exactly.
They stay on code.
They stay on code.
Stay on code.
Anybody else got anything to add in, please?
Oh, not just on this measure. You already brought it up, Jamal. But just the fact that they weren't even homicide cops, and that the only thing, and that they were the ones who were seeming to do all the homicide work. You know what I mean? They were the ones who found the gun. They were the one who found the eyewitness, and but they weren't even homicide cops. They weren't even used to doing that kind of police work, and all of the work that they did was so perfect that it, you know what I mean? Yet it was clearly they coached the witness. You know what I mean? And so. I guess that's the part where it's like, how is there no questions raised about this then, the same way that if the Dukran case taints 3,000 cases, how are we just not going back and looking at everything that they were involved in with a fresh lens? You know what I mean? Why is that not part of the process? And we know why,
Right.
And now, on a recurring theme here, because me with the I'm always interested in the white people. You know what I mean? I find it fascinating. So in this case, we have a couple of levels of white people. Once again, we have, of course, the Good Samaritan level. That's that's his godmother, right? Miss Murphy and all that. We have the lawyer level, right? But then we also too have the journalist level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it started off with Dick Lair. And let me see if I'm correct here. Yep. Dick Lair, author of The Fence.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and that's the book about how some other dirty cops beat up a black man named Michael Cox, and beat him up because he was a black cop, a plainclothes, and they mistook him for a regular old black person, and they gave him the business, right? And then of course tried to cover it up, and then of course gave him hell, and that's a whole story. But Dick Lair is a longtime journalist, one of those kind of hard scrabble crime beat kind of guys. And so at that time, he pulled up the warrant records that they were pulling. Because remember, as he was explaining it, in order to get a warrant, you got to go to a judge and you got to say, yo, I need this warrant. Well, what for? Well, Pookie told me the Department 3, is selling the dope or whatever. Okay, so all the warrants. They had 47 warrants that they had issued from one informer.
One informer.
One informer. Now, Tekashi can't do that.
No.
You know what I mean? You a hell of an informer. They might as well make you a detective.
Representing cases all over the city.
All over the city, right? And that's another thing, because as you know, and as the man explained a little bit, okay, so you might know a little something is popping in Roxbury, a little something is in Dorchester, but if you know what's going on in Roxbury, Dorchester, Chinatown, Hyde Park, Alston, Brighton, whatever, you either the mafia or you a figment of somebody's imagination. And in this case, it was a figment of somebody's imagination. And so they just made up these cases, and it, results in 47 warrants. Then the beautiful thing too, the journalist broke down, well, when they would do a bust, they only found money 21% of the time.
Right.
But all the other cops, they did a comparable another drug unit in West Roxbury, and then they did the totals for the whole city. And they were both very close, 66 and 67%, right? So normally, cop does a drug bust, and 66 to 67% of the time, they find money attached with it. Now, not for nothing, even that number's low to me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? you dig? All right, but whatever, I digress. And particularly at that time period, too. I know what was going on. But other people might have had the good sense to not be so greedy.
Right.
Okay? These dudes was doing the Bugs Bunny count. One for you, one for me, one for you, 1, 2 for me. They were like reporting some of it sometime, none of it sometime, all of it sometime, whatever. But they would take it too much. 21%. Okay? And of course, that's only what they found in terms of their investigation. So if they're saying 21%, and if they saying these people stole $250,000 off to the side, it's probably more, because that's just what they found out.
That only deals with stuff where they actually filled out a search warrant to do it. That's not all the random shakedowns and rough ups and stop and search and stop and frisk with no warrants.
And not for nothing, look, not only is it the search warrant, what did they go back to each of those drug dealers and say, hey, you were booked for 5 pounds of reefer. Oh, nah, man, nah, I really had 20. I had 20 pounds of reefer and I had $50,000 under the bed. I don't know that drug dealer. You see? So they're never going to get a true accounting of what was going on. And not for nothing, too. Oh, here's another part of it, too, that, folks like to forget about, too. And, it's kind of touched on, and I guess we'll get there, too. But the other part of that is, what else would get taken and get missing and go over here and go over there? Guns.
Yep.
We also know every cop always had a throwaway gun. So he could either blast you with it and toss it, or shoot you and put it in your hand. Okay?
And you know, and you make a good point. And one of the things that we need to figure out what needs to come to light for the public, especially for the Jose De La Rosa case. How and why did they pick him? He was squeaky clean. He was brand new, right? He didn't have a whole lot of Boston Western civilization savvy. He was really just trying to grind and he gets out of his car to a gun to his head, and he just so happened to have, you know what I'm saying, $2,500 somewhere in his apartment, and they knew it. Like I'm trying to figure out, how did they pick him? Like, this thing is a lot deeper than what we even saw.
Yeah, I thought about that too. So, I came up with a couple scenarios in my mind. Boom. At that time, police were, even though these older, middle-aged, Barney Miller-looking white guys, they were in the hood active, and they were sleeping with a lot of younger women. Some prostitutes and some just young women who were trying to come up on the come up, and you got a guy who got a lot of money and showing you a lot of attention and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, loose lip ships, and, I don't know if there was, how that happened. So could have been something like that. And he was somewhat targeted, or maybe he was affiliated with somebody that, whatever, not him, he's squeaky clean, but maybe he had a cousin or a homeboy or whatever. I don't know. Or the other thing is complete mistaken identity, because, we all look alike.
For real.
So, so they could have hummed him up, and not for nothing, with a Dominican at that point, and you put cocaine on him, he was going to take all of that charge. Okay.
Every day.
I was going to say, Dominicans were big with that back in the 80s.
Tell me about it.
Shut up.
Listen. Shout out to the plug. but yeah, for real. No, that was a big thing, and also to a part of discrimination. And I mean, not for nothing, but to be funny, of course. Jamaicans, and remember all the posses, and they were discriminated against and whatnot, and trafficking with the marijuana, and Dominicans and Puerto Ricans were seen more to be with the cocaine. Asians maybe down in Chinatown more with the heroin, and you know what I mean, all this type of stuff. So there was a lot of different ethnic places and different things, and the prostitution, the gambling, and all that. Every community and culture, we all had our little underbelly, and our open and common enemy took advantage of every crack in the house. Okay. Right. And weaseled their way in and took advantage of obvious our shortcomings, right? And they used it. So yeah, they framed him with the coke, and it took us 2,300. She said, okay, I don't know who this is on the iPhone, but please, too, if you have the ability to, please chime in. Chat is cool, but we'd much rather hear your voice and see your face if you have the ability.
Hold on, brother. They didn't just take his 2,300. He also had to pay 2,500 in bail. His girlfriend had to pay money to bail him out for, something that he didn't do. And this is a tax-paying citizen. Like, I know they like to justify robbing drug dealers. This was a man who was getting up every day, going to work and paying his taxes, and he was robbed twice, if you ask me.
Oh yeah,
a good job at that. I mean, job at the airport, doing the parking the planes, as he said. I wish I would have had that job back in the day. That sounds like a good job, right?
For real, he had $5,000 at his disposal.
I'm just chiming in. Peace, family.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That I like that aspect of the documentary. That was a beautiful nugget, because it shows, again, that it's not an anomaly. Like, these practices was crazy. You know what I'm saying? That they was literally like, they could just grab anybody. You know what I'm saying? And victimize, and they did. So that was a very, very a beautiful point of the documentary. That again, begs the question, like, the police department has to be held accountable for that, right? And so, like, how do we, is that something, Jamarhl, that that the community review board, you know what I'm saying? I'm not, like, is that something that would be caught under the community review board? Someone get raided by the police and they do something like that to them. They come to the community review board to look into that.
Yes, they could. They would have under the way that we structured it. They would have a variety of means to do that. A2 and Whytee, who has a funny name, but that's Michael Whytee, an officer from Cambridge. You don't need to raise your hand over here. Just get in where you fit in. Right after I make this
Didn't
point.
you have a song about Whytee at one point?
I had several, but yeah, I had a song called Kill Whytee. Yes, a song called Kill Whytee, which was a parody of the fact that I was so much hearing Kill Nigger in hip hop, right?
Yeah.
And so I flipped it because I knew one is acceptable, one is not. You know what I mean? But yes,
the prophet.
Exactly. Give thanks. But so I just want to say that in that point, damn it, I just lost my doggone point. All right, so I'm gonna just go ahead, Whytee, please.
So a couple of things stood out to me when I watched, like, that first thing y'all were talking about when he got out of the wagon. It was like I watched the two detectives in their suits get out of the wagon with them, and it never goes down that way. They're never traveling with the suspect in the wagon. They take him out the wagon, but they were in there with him. That never happens. It's never. I've been on the job 23 years. That has never happened. But that was just right from the beginning. But the way these dudes operated, one of the key things is when they talked about, they called the dude Plain View.
Yeah.
When they kept referring to him as Plain View. See, that does, when you say Plain View, that removes, like, you can take everything right there. Like, when you say it's Plain View, as opposed to, all right, we have to come back with a search warrant, and then, in a different, later on that day, or once the judge issues it, we have to come back with a search warrant. We probably have to bring other eyes, other cops, other people there. This way we get to operate within our little circle of 3 or 4, and we're going to ransack the whole place and just say we saw this stuff in plain view. You know what I mean? So it now you can get, so instead of what you go with the warrant and you see there's 50 grand there, you plain view, you take whatever it is that you take, and you don't have to explain anything further than that, or you don't have to have your supervisor come down and be around the warrant, or even some plain clothes, just regular beat cops, because all of that you have to have a beat cop secure the scene in between you getting the warrant and all that. It just gives you the room to operate directly right there and with impunity. You just do whatever the hell you want to do. It's you.
Hey, I remember the point too. It was you had asked about the civilian review. Right. So yes, under the way we wrote it, people would have a couple of means to bring it towards civilian review. One, if it happened to you, or whatever, you, your family, whatever, you could issue a complaint yourself, directly to the civilian review board, directly to City Hall, or directly through the Boston Police or whatever. If it happens the way that I wrote it, you'll be able to file it like health centers, guidance counselor at school, libraries, you know what I mean? Anywhere that's a city facility, basically, you know what I mean? Yeah. So you could file the complaint yourself. Or if, let's say we were all members of the Civilian Review Board, right? And let's say Trial 4 came out. We go in there Monday morning with a new fire under our butts, okay? And we're like, no, open them. We want this file and that file and them files and those files. And the way that I wrote it, and the way that it goes down now, is that the Civilian Review Board also has the ability to basically interject their own thing that they want to. And it's beyond just, police brutality or when the police kill a civilian, but it's the ability to look at policies. So, for instance, the Civilian Review Board, the way it's about to go down, hopefully, or it's going down now, would be able to look at, let's say that what they had, that corruption unit. Hey, what's going on there? Let's take a look at that corruption unit. Hey, yo, what's up with this warrant rate? 47 warrants from one informer. The Civilian Review Board would be able to say, let's look at that data. That don't look good. That don't smell good. So this Civilian Review Board is different than any in the country, as far as I know, because it has a parameter far beyond just police brutality and just the killing of civilians in it. Yes, it would be able to look at things like that, and hopefully, whoever ends up getting on there, I hope that they have that spirit about them, and that these are the type. And if not, they could be pushed by the community as well, through us as a community saying, yo, we want y'all to look into this right here.
Right.
What kind of authority would the Civilian Review Board have? Would they have the authority to get a person fired? Like, do they have that kind of power?
So all of that gets real tricky, and I don't want to go into a whole Civilian Review Board thing on this here. But what I can say is I want to encourage everybody, the final report is out, the recommendations, whatnot. The other day, Walsh started implementing a bunch of stuff. What I can say is that the Civilian Review Board, which sits underneath the OPAT, the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, would have 3 arms. 1, Civilian Review Board. 2, IOP. Independent, oh my goodness. My brain is going. I'm getting old, y'all. But it's the Internal Affairs Oversight Panel. Internal Affairs Oversight Panel. And then the third branch is just like the executive office, the administrative arm that will kind of help a lot of that stuff get done, investigators, research. There'll be an executive director in that, but that will be all up under that thing of the OPAT. And under the OPAT, they have subpoena powers, which is more than we've ever had here before in Boston, which in cases where they really need to do a deep dive investigation, they will have that tool at their disposal, although it's not something that folks are just going to be giving out like Oprah. You get a subpoena, and you get a subpoena. These are things of a serious nature, but yeah, we took a time with that.
Yeah, that's the key right there, because now you have to answer questions. You have to come to answer questions, and you will be under oath. Right. Yeah, I got you. That's very important for a Civilian Review Board.
The first white man in here, the first white guy, not a DA, what was he, the AG at the time, the one who pulled the cops in, the one that got Brazil to flip, basically.
Yes.
Remember that? That's how he got the information, because he compelled them. He made them. You going to testify? You
got to. He has subpoena power. Absolutely. Very, very important piece.
Yep. And not for nothing. So we just finished off with the whole part where took that man's $2,300, was about to place the bag of cocaine on him, and as Sonny also so aptly pointed out, and stole the other $2,500 from him from bail. I hope he got that back at least. But in any event, later on he did get I think it was a $68,000 settlement.
It was 62.
Yeah. 62? Okay, so something that
he got some money.
Huh?
He got some money.
He got some money, and now ain't that a blip? Where and Sean ain't got $22.
Yeah, say that, man. That's a very important point, and just the whole conversation of them doing that to that brother, robbing him for his money and then trying to plant drugs on him, it's reminiscent to the conversation that we was having yesterday when Brother Ralph was on, and he testified of similar situations where Mulligan himself had arrested him, and charged him with selling heroin, and he didn't even have no heroin on him. So this is something that has been going on for years. But to your point, the fact that the brother, the Dominican brother, did eventually get a settlement and got a form of justice when he was, he was locked up for, was it a couple of days, or however long it was. It wasn't 21 or 22 years.
Right.
Yet, Sean, who had to basically spend half his life in jail, they still equivocating on whether they want to do justice by him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Crazy. It's crazy. And then too, we already mentioned him, but that dude, Ed McNeely. Yo, what kills me is some of these people who, quote unquote, in the name of justice, here's this guy, however many, because he's retired now, I guess, but however many years he worked on the force, he's supposed to be a good guy. You know, supposed to be one of the good ones. You know what I mean? Truth, justice, the American way, and all that stuff. And you still, in the face of all that, got the nerve to fix your face to say that. That is like, you know, to me, this is the closest we could get to it. To me, like that's some Klan stuff to me. That's Klan. That's like White Citizens Council, where they could still, with a smile on their face, say, "No, sir. Nobody around here ever seen that boy. Last time we saw him, he was with you."
But
you know what I mean? Just so.
But I mean, I gotta give shout out to Remy, right? Because you got this dude. He was dropping gems. I picked up a gem today, right? Watching episode 4. He put in there, you know, McNeely's response to, you know, Robertson and Sarah Brazel's corruption had no bearing on the cleanliness of Mulligan's case, right? But when they went into the Sean Drumgold case, a key piece of the Sean Drumgold case was, and they had a quick snippet of the newspaper article from 2003. It says, ex-gang member speaks up for Drumgold.
Know that guy.
We know that guy, right?
Yeah, we know him.
And so Brother True C, right? My predecessor in leadership, right, is an ex-gang member, right? I don't know if we know the type of implications that was involved with him even taking a position, speaking up for Sean Drumgold in that situation by saying, I was affiliated, he was affiliated, and I'm telling you, based on my level of social credibility, because I turned my life around, that y'all should bank on the fact that he had no involvement in this case, and that was a turning point in the Drumgold case, right?
Absolutely.
And that was a soul-searching, sobering moment in any ex-gang member's life to like really go against the grain of what that is all about, to step up and have a full-page article with your quotes on it. And I know elements of that. And he had to be counseled and say, you know, it's all right because you're doing the right thing. But then you got the contrast of McNeely in the same situation with the same opportunity to do the same thing at some rate, still doubling down. The contrast there and the way that the director dropped that
More
in there was
in
incredible, man. Right. It was incredible.
Honest gangsters and crooked cops.
Yeah, there's more integrity in the street gangs than in you know what I'm saying, the police department. You know, but that's the excellent point that you brought up. You know, and again, man, and I, you know, it's my position to say it, and I'm gonna say it. You know that, you know, the Nation of Islam, you know, was intricately involved in a lot of these things, but we played the back. So even looking at that clip, like there's no one really knows that True Caesar FOI, you know what I'm saying, was the captain of the FOI, man, in the Nation of Islam, and was very integral in freeing Sean Drumgold. And even, you know, when we go to that story as well, you know, our brother Rodney as well was very integral in helping brother Sean Drumgold and testifying, you know. But, you know, and I was thinking about this yesterday, you know, after we got off, when I was thinking about, you know, Ralph Martin and how he was saying how, you know, he was going to continue to prosecute until they got a conviction. You know what I'm saying? And then like that was part of it that bothered me, you know, so it's a black prosecutor, then it's a black judge, you know, and I was talking to someone, and it was like one of the other, you know, one of the things that we have to know is the condition of young black people back then in that time in the early 90s, where even most mainstream leadership had turned their back on the black youth, right? Most of the so-called mainstream black leadership, they was all in. on locking the black man up, throwing away
Animals,
right?
thugs,
predators.
Some of them were even calling on the National Guards to come in, and it was during that same time that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan started to stop the killing tour, which led to the all men's meeting, black men meeting, and he was validating us and he was lifting us up, which led to the Million Man March. And so, again, let's understand when you look at that and you see a black judge that's willing to keep trying this brother and allowing the police their shenanigans, and you see a black prosecutor, let's not forget the climate in the early 90s where even some of our own leadership in the black community had totally turned their back on the young black men.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's right.
And not for nothing too. It ain't that nobody noticed or nobody remembers the history. Just as it always is, it's a few. But those who know, they know and they know good. You know what I mean? Don't you know no good? We know good, right? And then the other people like the general public, they might not be paying attention. And also too, what we also forget too is now, Brother Randy, me and you around the same age, and I feel young. We both look relatively good. We getting old, and so these young cats who's coming up now, who in their 20s or whatever, they 30s, they don't know nothing about us.
They don't know,
or like whatever, whatever. So now we the ancient dinosaurs. So we can imagine the other generations. The only other point I just wanted to bring up to that right quick, because you brought up how that political time was, and I'm talking about street politics now for True C and whatnot. Now, so Sean Drumgold, for those that don't know, he was from around my way, Humboldt Avenue, right? But he, wasn't a Homestead Hoyer, and he wasn't a Humboldt Raider, right? He just lived around it like me, you dig? And then True C was Castlegate, right?
Right.
Yes, sir.
So True C was Castlegate, and that's not a popular politic, right? For that. But as you said, the beautiful thing of it is, it ain't like he was snitching. You see what I'm saying? So he's coming out with a story of who did not do it.
Right.
Thank you.
Which is what happened to me as well, because we'll get to that later too. But when I keep telling this story about Armstead, the times when I got ran around by the cops on Humboldt out there, talking about pants getting dropped and all that, the 2 times was around the Charles Stewart thing and around the Tiffany Moore thing. They went berserk for both of them things. And around the Tiffany Moore thing, they was trying to get everybody and try to get somebody to say who did it or whatever. They snatched me up. I was like, I don't know who did it, but I could tell you who did not do it. And they were like, yeah, we know Sean didn't do it. Whatever. And they said 2 names and whatever. That was my entrance to Dirty Cops, because I'm like, wow, they just acknowledged that they know he did not do it.
Right.
They mentioned 2 other names.
Yep.
And he stayed in jail for another 13 years, because that was like when it happened. But all right.
So
yeah. Hold on. Just this last point, and then please go. Because we'll tail this off with that. After all we talked about with Brazil, Ed McNeely, and all that, once again, Dick Lair, I think, summed it up. He gave a quote. He said, it was a culture of lying and corruption. A culture of lying and corruption. That's messed up if that's your culture.
Right.
Not honor and integrity, not, work ethic and discipline. You know what I mean? Lying and corruption. All right, please. Y'all go ahead. Whoever had that next point, please.
That was me. I want to go back to what Brother Jamarhl said in terms of giving a shout out to Remy, who is the director or producer or a combination of both, in terms of the beauty of the visualization of this entire series, in terms of the former, leadership during the time of Mulligan's death, in depicting or the way I imagine it, Brother Jamarhl, is that Remy had researched and dug up all of this former evidence, videos of that time, and it was almost like he was setting up those former captains, those 2 retired officers All right, go ahead. I'm gonna ask you very specific questions.
Yeah.
Okay, but I already got the juice. You know what I mean? So I thought that was. I just think that the beauty of that, and you know, it was all happening simultaneously. Therefore, they didn't know what he already knew. Which to me, Remy would probably be a very good investigator, detective, or officer, or whatever.
Say that.
That part I just want to highlight and focus on, and just say that I was thinking the same thing, but that was happening throughout. Secondly, about those two retired officers, a couple of questions I have about them, and I don't know if there's any way of knowing, but within the organizational structure of any police department, right? Those two in particular, I'm wondering if they were superiors of either Mulligan, Acera, Brazil, and Keeler, and all the rest of them, right?
Ed McNeely was the head of detectives.
He was he was the captain detective.
So which leads me to my main question, and why they were so adamant about, number one, being very dismissive to the behavior of those detectives under his purview.
Right.
And what do they have to hide as it relates to their relationship to the case, right? And then my last point was, just to keep it in line with episode 4, and I'll probably have more to say later, but
we know you will.
I will. I stayed quiet yesterday, so check that. Here's the other question that I have about, all right, that was also the episode, I believe, where Sean had been, and Brother Randy, you know more about the inside of the walls than I do, but I think Sean had done like an interview in that segment where he said, in between the denial of his evidentiary hearing by the judge who had been presiding over that request, he was then transferred from Walpole to another facility, which I believe was Shirley or Sharon, I don't know what town, but it was
Bernowski and Shirley. That's the max.
Okay, so now the max of that. I'm saying, why did they transfer him to that place? What was it to really, like, because he said, I think he said, yo, I'm being transferred from Walpole, and now I got to be inside for 22 hours or some crazy amount of
21 hours a day.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like to dehumanize him even further. Like, and so here it is. It's like all of the systems against him, like in concert to what? I'm just asking, like, that really bothered me.
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a very great point. It was actually, when it was built as, that was the first Supermax. It was super maximum security, because back then, Walpole
Can you explain the differences, though? I guess that's my question to you and why I brought you up. Explain, like, the difference from a Walpole to a Supermax. I thought Walpole was the Supermax.
Well, it was built. The Supermax is the amount of time that they spend, the 22-hour lockup. You know what I'm saying? So it's really like, it's like the whole institution is built almost like a segregation, if you will. You know, at that time, that's the way it was being ran. As it was built, it was a Supermax. Yeah. So, you know, like in Walpole is a maximum security, but they're not locked in 22 hours. They have more tier time. They're out of their cell. You know, they're allowed to travel to the yard and to the library and to religious services. You know, there's a greater degree of movement between the maximum and when it was classified as Supermax, which is, they built it you know, specifically as a response to, you know, the gang phenomenon that they perceived this big threat with the gang prior to them building the Supermax, they had a gang unit in Walpole. There was a section in Walpole that was dedicated to the brothers that they labeled as being part of a gang, where they had a restricted movement. But then they built a whole prison specifically for that, which was Sousa Baranowski in Shirley. That's the max. Now, that's, it's still operating. Now it is the only maximum facility prison, because Walpole has now been turned into a receiving center. But the difference is the amount of freedom and amount of time you're in the cell. And so actually right now, Shirley recently, because since the last riot that they had there last year, now they're operating, whereas one side is really back to like a Supermax status, and then the other side is not.
So the question then is, why, after the denial of his evidentiary hearing, was he then transferred to the Supermax? What was the connection? Why would they do that?
My best guess would be, this is Whytee, my best guess would be to take the sting out of him and take the fight out of him and have him worry more about his situation on the inside than trying to fight back. They knew they put an innocent dude away, and the best thing they could do, or the safest thing they could do for their case, was to have him worry about everything but the case.
And who makes that decision?
Well, my guess is it's up on those higher levels, probably at that McNeely level, to be honest.
Well, I would think
his friends within the system.
What I would say is that those are there may be cross-pollination between law enforcement on the streets and law and especially in the high positions, but generally those are different agencies that do their own thing. But if you coming in there to the DOC as a cop killer, right, as an alleged cop killer, and already got the label of a gang member, they're gonna put you in the Supermax just by virtue of the charges. You know what I'm saying? So they would do that right off the top. Someone that's in there for killing a cop, they're gonna put you there. To what degree did the Boston police have with doing that? Generally, that wouldn't be their decision, but who's to say what type of cross-pollination is happening, in those fraternities?
Yeah, and in my experience, that would be something more likely. An overzealous prosecutor would get word to somebody inside a DOC. They have a kind of closer connection than just straight police to the DOC. You know what I mean? It might come from there. But yeah, and then also too, and you never know who's related to who either. So
Right.
Let's look up everybody name. What's old boy's name? Look up every person with the last name Mulligan that works for the state. You know what I mean, or whatever. All right.
Well, all you got to do is look at bulges and just see.
There you go. Exactly. Now let me ask this though, brother Randy. Now in Supermax though, do you have a cellie or is it one to a cell?
Well, it used to be back then it was single cells. They're now actually double bunking.
Just because it's overcrowded, right?
No.
Oh.
Because they want to. You know what I'm saying? It's not overcrowded. The numbers are actually down right now.
Okay.
In the prisons. But yeah, there's double bunking. You know what I'm saying? Which is a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
Right. Because those cells, all cells are small, but those cells were made as single cells. That's not no quad cell. That's not no, you know what I mean? That cell was made for one. Now it got two, and boom. All right. So let's go on, and not for nothing, because it was a stickling point for me the other night, because I wanted to remember that judge's name. I called him Clarence Thomas. Judge McDaniels is his name. I don't know if he's still around or whatnot, but that's the one who denied the motion and all that, and that just that just didn't seem like that didn't make any kind of legal sense. He just like did that out of just straight spite and going along with the thing. But yeah, so as Sunshine had brought up, boom, then Shirley Max, 21 hours a day. This is also too now where the other white woman comes in, right? The Elaine Murphy, who we talked about before, right? So now there she is. We talked about it a little bit before, so I'm not going to belabor this point, but it's just funny because of how it happened. She's at her house in Canada, had moved from Massachusetts, minding her own business, la-di-da-di-da. Her friends come to visit her one day, and they just happen to bring the globe with them. She sees the globe, and just lo and behold, on the cover is Sean Ellis, and she's like, "What? I know that kid," right? And just by some random act, she had been, Sean had went to Needham, Metco elementary schools with her son Mark, and they were the host family, and she had these fond memories of Sean, and she was like, "No, he's not no killer," and then she got involved. Now, here was the other thing about what I wanted to say about the God factor too, right? Because it's funny. Before I talked about the juror, the first juror, and the jury from the third one knowing each other, all this weird stuff is happening. But with Elaine Murphy, it's also weird that she was a writer.
Right.
Because had she been a baker, she would have just sent him some cookies.
She said, I made an op-ed for the Globe.
Now that's also check that in, because that's also white privilege.
Come on now.
So
absolutely.
Not only a writer, but a woman who could say, well, what I write from my lips to God's ears, right? This is going to go straight, bing, Globe op-ed. So that's a big damn deal for those that don't know, right? That's a big damn deal. So for her to do that, because once again, like I say, had she been a airline stewardess, a caterer.
Now, Jamal, I used to be a resident director of a Metco type program in a very affluent community just north of Boston, right? My wife and I, 6 years strong, resident director. And we worked with scholarship young men that came to the Boston area to attend a particular school in high school and matriculate and go to college and get a free education. And I want to highlight that point because she said she was his host family.
Right.
That's different. He didn't just go to school with her son.
Right.
She was his mother when he wasn't with his mother out in Needham. And he spent time over there eating, sleeping, you know what I'm saying, playing and going to school. That's a very different and deeper level of a spiritual connection. She was his host mom. Like she was his guardian in facto, to include a legal term. Right. When he wasn't in the custody of his mother, she was his mother. That's deep. And how that connection, you know what I'm saying, really, and the reason why I brought up that, because the young men that attended my program had host families. Like that was part of the program. Like that's, you can't get the best part of this program if you don't have a host family to help you acclimate to the community out there. So out of all the people in the world, it was her.
And it's deep because too, once again, when you get these random acts of kindness, these people, they don't have to do it. Now, the only other thing too, once again, as I say, I got a million bags of questions for Sean. But one thing too, because while it does paint this rosy picture, and I'm sure that these people were wonderful too, I'm sure that his experience while he was in Needham, I dare I say that he's been called nigger before. Dare I say. You know what I mean? Based on my own experience in Metco, Lexington Christian Academy, Framingham, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But also meeting some white kids who were cool, and we played Atari 2600, and you know what I mean? Whoop, 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 blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the fact of that she was a writer, that really, to me, was just another godsend, because it could have, another person who was just as empathetic and just as concerned, but it wouldn't have had not only the power but the tools. So that was a blessing. You look like you was about to say something, Brother Randy.
Yeah, well, just to double down on that, and I know you kind of shy away a little bit from it, even though you see it, the divine intervention. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna lean into it. You know what I'm saying? We have to recognize that reality here, man. There's no coincidence there. You know what I'm saying? Like that was in fact divine intervention. And some may question, well, why? Why would an innocent man have to serve 22 years? But unearned suffering is redemptive. And so now that the documentary's out, right? Well, first of all, Brother Sean was able to, and not that, none of us would choose this, you know what I'm saying? And it's definitely a tragedy that he spent 22 years in jail, but at the same time, he was able to grow and develop, and he was able to become a different man, the man that we're seeing now, because that brother has so much in him. He and this is why Jim, was it Jim Rooney? What's the interviewer that kept asking him a dumb question? Jim Browdy.
Jim Browdy.
Jim Browdy kept asking him, aren't you mad? And it's like they can't understand, because you're looking at a human being who is spiritually cultivated and developed. That's why a man could do 22 years wrongfully convicted and still come out and be humble and still come out and thrive. You know what I'm saying? So there was something transformative that happened with him, but also, his whole experience has brought to light. And that's why this conversation is so important. And we shouldn't take it lightly and let this moment past us, because this happened for a reason, right? And Sean paid for it, but God has allowed this situation to bring to light this rot, this cancer, that's in our city, and that's really fundamental to most cities in the country. But now that it's been brought out to the light, we have to deal with it. So I just wanted to push in and lean into that as a minister, as a believer, into nothing happens for by mere coincidence. And I believe wholeheartedly that it was divine intervention, and our brother Sean is out now.
Yes, sir. I believe that as well. I strive to leave wiggle room for those who may not believe as much. I just think about, like, see, if my mama was here, my mama would tell me that's Jesus. Yeah. Okay, you know what I'm saying? And so everybody got their own different interpretation of it. You know what I mean? My aunt might tell me, well, that's karma. You know what I mean? Or oh, well, somebody had a crystal under their pillow for 90 days and that's why it happened. So all I'm saying is I whatever happened, the good thing happened, and I'm glad it happened. And I know it did not happen by just no random universal roll of the dice. That happened on purpose because it was too perfect.
But wasn't episode 4 quite emotional? Let's just keep it real, right? It kind of like interconnected every piece of his upbringing together. Right. There was a focus on his mom, and I don't know if we're giving her as much credit as she deserves in terms of like her basically stripping herself naked at the first episode. I'm not going to talk about the first episode, but in acknowledging her shortcomings as a young mother raising, children back then in the midst of, the crack era. And I just want to
hold tight right there now, because we actually that's actually the next point in there was more the family life. So just hold tight on that, and then I want you to come back after I add in all this, as I want other people I think want to chime in as well. Once again, I try to tell people we don't really do the hand thing here. So you just jump in, you fit in. If you got a point, hey, excuse me, whatever, and you just jump in. It's all good. It's all love. It's a discussion. This is Thanksgiving dinner without the good food. You dig? So what I was gonna say now was, because the next thing after that, it went to him, not having a father, or the father being, as many of our fathers were, in and out, semi-absent. He didn't really have a good recollection, what have you. And then the next thing it goes to is the death of the brother, right, in 1983, who also dies in Needham, right, in a pool. Now, don't get me started on the conspiracies there. I want to talk to them witnesses.
I think
You
we all
understand what I'm
kind of
saying?
had some conspiratorial thoughts about that particular incident.
Yeah, because not for nothing, I remember in my coming up days, there was like we didn't go swimming with white boys like that. Yo, there was like a series of them that happened at Wise, that happened at like in the suburbs. A couple of them happened, but whatever. So that seems suspicious too. Boom. But remember now, just to go back, with the other episodes, it starts off with the tragedy of the two cousins who were murdered, right?
Yeah.
So here's a young man who got tragedy. He got a 3-layer tragedy cake, right? And then, as you talking about, moms who, God bless moms, because now what's crazy about that is here go moms going through it, and as you said, yes, was very transparent with it, and I was on crack, and I was dealing with this and that. So for her to be checked out but tuned in at the same time, because one thing that happened is what was clear, at no point during the crack did she not love that boy. You understand what I'm saying? That was one thing that remained intact. And in fact, it was the thing that pulled her out of that. Was like, it was the thing that kind of gave a wake-up call, like, no, I got to shake this fog off and get to what's happening with my baby boy.
Son. Right.
You know what I mean? So, all of this type of stuff, this is, at the same time that this is a tragic story, this is also a story of human triumph and strength and family and unity and all this type of stuff. This is
the stuff that they say that we don't have in our community.
Oh, and we got the most of it. You understand what I'm saying?
Come on now. Man, say that. Let's park right there, man, because that was an emotional episode, man. Just, I felt, that was just hard, man. Our brother went through a lot, from losing his brother, his older brother, at a young age. Like, just think about, and this is really indicative of many of the people in our community, man. We're suffering with so much trauma, you know what I'm saying? But to, looking at it in Sean's life, and it's funny that you mentioned the drowning, because that same thing came to my mind, like, what really happened there? You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole discussion of its own. But for him to have lost his brother, to have lost, his father, to have lost his two cousins, all this trauma that he was going through, and then at 19 to be taken, man, and put in a maximum and then a super maximum security prison, and have to grow up. Like, anyone that's looking at this whole thing, to not be on the side of wanting justice, you know what I'm saying, for Sean. I mean, like, how could you not? Seeing all that this young man has went through and came through, and now is on the other side, and and he's a beautiful brother too, man. If you get to know him, he's a hardworking brother. You know what I'm saying? So, so just the heaviness of the tragedies that he had to go through, that stood out to me as well.
Anybody else want to chime in on there, please? I think there was somebody with the iPhone who would want to chime in. Anybody else who has not spoken already, please, we want to hear your thoughts and we value your voice. I know a lot of us are very talkative, but we do not mean that to like overwhelm you. Please jump on in. We're going to take a pause so you can get in.
Can I finish my point?
Absolutely, you may. And then hopefully also too, I want to encourage other people. But yeah, go ahead, finish yours, and then please, other people, please.
And so I was just really lifting up his mother's when I was saying how emotional that episode is because that was the episode in which, she reminisced about that time when she lost her eldest son, and just watching his mother's composure as she was describing that period, and that was like, indicative of what they call a strong Black woman is. And I just celebrate, her.
Thank you. Please, somebody else who has not spoken, please come on in and say something, please.
Okay, so so one of my biggest concerns overall in the series, but in particular in this episode, it's highlighted when they talk about E5 in relation to the other area district police stations reporting 20% of the money. When they talk about the one confidential informant, right, that I think was on the paperwork of over 40 cases spread out throughout the city, right? When you talk about the known interactions with young girls, the interactions with prostitutes, you're only talking about, in this series, officers, and you're talking about what, up to a lead detective. My question becomes, how high up does this corruption go as far as in what people know? I don't know the official titles of who's where in the police department, but how far up does it go, and how far up does it go monetarily as far as who's financially benefiting? This is something that you never hear about. You always see the rank and file cop, or the detective that has to answer. But clearly, if Netflix has access to information that says just these things alone, this information has been known about for some time. This information was known about at the time. And so even when, and not to jump ahead, but even when you speak about the Civilian Review Board, how high up are we holding people accountable? That's my concern, because these guys were not operating rogue and no one knew about it.
All the way up.
And no one can stop them.
Hey, for real, I think that, okay, what I was thinking of before when we were talking about, let me go back to his name again, Ed McNeely, okay? Ed McNeely was the captain of detectives. That's a pretty coveted position. You're like the head of the detective unit itself. Boom, boom. When you come on the force, you don't just start and they just make you captain, right? So you start off as the rookie and you work your way up the ranks. So, that means he's also older than those guys. So he was a little bit older than Mulligan and them. Now, also, when you're a rookie and they teach you a couple of things, all right, listen, all right, come here, kid. You're going to take a ride with me tonight. Listen, this is where the dope dealers hang out. Look, the pimps are over there. The hoes are over there. Look, this is a pickpocket over here. Look, that's how it went down. So I would assert that Mulligan, Acera, and Robinson, Brazil, were probably taught by Ed McNeely and their class of upperclassmen. No different than the freshmen in high school learned from the seniors and the juniors. So that is what it is, and not for nothing to me, obviously, why he would defend it so much. Also, the point that you brought up, Stefano, which was a good point as well, is, of course, they don't want to admit that their underlings were doing any wrongdoing under their watchful eye, because now they could get them a joint venture. You know what I mean?
It's just another case of the blue back in the blue. That's all. That's what I get from it. It's the blue back in the blue. As you can see, as that McNeely, if you can see during his interview, he's quickly dismissing any wrongdoings right off the bat. And it's always, well, I didn't know. Well, we don't know of it. But I guarantee you that they did know of it, but it just shows that how much it doesn't matter, I guess, which rank that you're in. Once you're kind of in that uniform and under that division, it's just, I think you all just become one. And I don't know. I just think it's the case of the blue back in the blue.
I think it's a little deeper than that. I think actually, which is why I raised that as being part of the first comment I made tonight, is I believe that there is a strong possibility that the reason why they were so adamant that there was not any wrongdoing in the case is because somewhere, somehow, they may be implicated as being part and parcel to not only that particular corruption case, but many others. And who knows whether or not being in those positions, so-called not knowing that you have these these officers that you're in charge of doing this stuff, who knows whether or not they receive kickbacks from that dirty money.
They're probably all doing all different kind of levels of dirt. There's probably different levels of it. And if you drop a dime on me, I got this on you. So you better not say nothing. Otherwise, we're gonna expose you. So, and for those cops like the McNeely to say they don't know, well, if you really don't know, then why you got an opinion on it?
Why do you have a job?
You got whores.
How does he have a job and he not know? Right? Like his
job is to know.
His job is to know. Like let's be real, man. And all right, and I'm gonna look at it from an opportunistic standpoint. Here it is. You got a bunch of guys. You got detectives making $45,000 a year, right? Which is not a whole lot of money. We're not talking about you need an extensive level of education. You just need to be a subject matter expert and certain amount of experience on the job. To Jamal's point, you need to be coachable, and this was an opportunity. This is generational wealth. These jobs are entitled. They're nepotized from fathers to sons to uncles to cousins. Like this is a network, and I could imagine that they're looking at it like, yo, there's a lot of money out here to get. There's a whole entire underworld market economy in this city, and we are in charge of it. So we can't lock everybody up because that's not fiscally responsible for what it is that Mulligan had 8 condos. He had an Act Legend and a Corvette in the 90s.
I was just saying, nobody had an Act Legend.
Come on, man. I mean, he was riding around and getting it.
Well, and they talk about how he had one of the highest arrest rates ever, and it's just like if those were his guys, you know what I mean? How can we assume that he was on anything different? Especially they talked to the other officer at the beginning of the episode, and he was like he ended up right where he should have been a long time ago. Like that he was a known sort of actor in that scene, and it's like my question again becomes like was brought up earlier is how high does it go, and how do we not interpret this as like a deliberate shutdown of something that clearly at least was negligence, if not complicity, if not like you said, co-venture.
Okay, right. So here's a big problem for us, and I'm gonna make a statement, and I want to ask a question. So the statement is one of our problems is, of course, with our chief of police, who is a police commissioner, who is now our first ever black man as chief of police, Commissioner Willie Gross. He too agreed and told the line. And I think as a community that it's fair to ask a question like, yo, like the whole world is going this way with it. How are you over here with it? You know what I mean? Like talk to us as a community, because many folks had him as their hopes of social justice, racial justice, diversity and all this. But of course, since he's come in, he's made statements that shock people and contradict what we think the sentiments of the direction that the city and the community want to move in. And then the other thing that I want to ask was, to Whytee, if you don't mind answering this, because if you do, don't, but as an officer, if you knew over here, Officer, Smith is dirty, he's shaking people down, he's messing with little girls, what would you do? And what kind of mechanism do they have set up? Like, what would you do with that?
Well, I've actually been in that situation a couple of times, and And not every cop on my job likes me because I kind of keep it real. I tell the truth. And I'm a dude that was raised either right or wrong. And you know, and if you got to face the slings of arrows to be with when you're right, you got to stand there and take it. And, you know, sometimes that might mean somebody's not going to get you back out there. But like there was a dude, like somebody who I knew got pulled over by somebody, and it was more than just disrespect. They blew smoke in their face. It was somebody who was they were Somalian, and it was a woman, and she was totally disrespected by this dude. And I helped her write the complaint, and told her how to submit it and the whole thing. The dude ended up getting fired. As a matter of fact, about 6 months ago, he was on the news. I don't know if you've seen it, but former Cambridge cop, I think he hit somebody at an ATM, an old man, and took his money or something. I don't know, some shit like that. But he was a former cop here, and he was somebody who was out on the street just disrespecting. He wasn't, I don't think he was robbing anybody or anything like that at the time. But it was like, I knew he shouldn't have been a cop. I watched the way he moved, and I helped her write it. You know, I didn't, you know, and I asked her to please keep my name out of it, but I sat down with her and helped her write the whole thing. And he ended up getting fired. That was probably, you know, the incident with them probably happened 6 years ago. But there's room to do it where you can, you know, you can do it. But doing it from, you know, a ground level and doing it from a higher level, because you know, like anything, politics, companies, the higher you get, the more skeletons you know about and you have. So my guess is, even if McNeely didn't know exactly what was going on, he knew something was wrong, and maybe he did his own little dirt that, like, I forget who said it, but somebody said, yeah, they probably had some dirt on him. And I think this whole thing was about a cover-up. I think he was a patsy. Sean Ellis was a patsy because they knew how bad that, and they just let it go unchecked. So it's all their fault. It was McNeely's job to know anybody under your charge. But the thing is, if they got it done quick, they got somebody put away, then this would have never raised in their minds, its ugly head, and they could have just, you know, kept moving. But unfortunately, this got found out 22 years later, and most of them are all retired.
Aye.
Yeah, it's no way, man. I had an incident with a law enforcement officer in the city of Boston recently, and I was rounding a corner onto Columbus Avenue right behind Northeastern, and he was at a construction site, and he steps out in front of my car, puts his hand out, and makes me stop, comes to my window, tells me, you know why I stopped you. Now he's on foot, he's on the construction detail. I'm like, no. He said, because you're driving too fast, you need to slow it down. I'm looking at him like he's crazy, because if I was speeding, you wouldn't feel safe walking out in front of me and putting your hand up and expecting me to stop. I might have been accelerating, but I wasn't speeding, because you would get hit. And I was like, nah, I don't agree with that. He was like, and then look behind you. These people was in the crosswalk. I'm like, not when I was coming down the street. They're in the crosswalk now because you stopped me. He said, pull over. Took my license, took my registration, wrote me a ticket, right? Long story short, I complained, fought the ticket, won, and get a letter in the mail that thank you for submitting your complaint, but we've looked into it, and we found that there's no basis for any further action and investigation on this matter. They never talked to me. When I called to make the complaint, they was like, we'll call you back. The next thing I got was a letter in the mail. So they circumnavigate, that they divert. Like, you have to have an act of Congress to really, you know, at certain levels, get accountability for police officers who are human too. They under a lot of stress. They think their job is to go out there and save the world, when that's not going to happen, because you can't impact public policy and and economics and the poverty rate with a badge and a gun. So I don't know why you think.
Well, the problem is a lot of them think that they're gonna save the world from us.
Exactly. And so I get it. And you know, and a lot of our law enforcement brothers and sisters aren't equipped with the tools they need to understand what their job is. And they, like my man just said, they end up being patsies in other situations as well. However, there's got to be checks and balances and some accountability. And unfortunately, we're dealing with one of the departments that are the most sophisticated at getting around that stuff. What happens in Boston becomes standard operating procedure nationally. I'm gonna just say that. I'm gonna put that out there.
Yeah.
It's documented.
Jamarhl, that's why it's such a huge thing for you guys to have a civilian review board. We've had it here for, I don't know, maybe 12, more than half of my career. And I noticed the change when it came in.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it's a strong thing, because now you got the people on your side, and you can't go to your regular, all right, this is the dude who sheltered me last time. Well, that dude's going to be scared because his job is on the line too. If whoever gets involved, there are eyes on him. You know what I mean? And so there's a level of accountability that you don't have when there is no civilian review board. It's a huge step.
What's the population of Cambridge?
Right now, it hovers between 110 and 120,000.
And how many cops you got?
Rank and file is usually, we're way lower than we should be right now. But rank and file is probably 225, and then you got so I think altogether sworn there's probably just north of 3, including like the commissioner and all that.
300?
Yeah.
Oh shit, I'm coming to Cambridge. I'm about to start me a criminal enterprise in Cambridge. I got more friends than that.
Can I just want to,
yeah, I don't know whether
y'all know I'm coming back right quick, but I think it was this was the episode with the media too, right? When the media was kind of like suggesting that they knew something was going to happen to Mulligan, and was in that there was a possibility that other officers, or what were they saying? Something like maybe they were inferring that
he was the most likely to get shot. You know, it's like your high school vote you know, the top 10 cops to get shot, he was always the most likely. And then when it happened, it like couldn't happen to a nicer guy, or he deserved it.
Right.
It was all of that talk. Right.
Yeah, out of everybody that could have
like
had a motive, Sean was probably at the bottom of a very, 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 very long list.
But that
bottom,
list also,
he had no motive. He didn't know him before, you know.
Exactly.
At all.
His motive
that
was
list
the baby
also
that
included other officers, no?
Right.
The other officers, I mean, you know, once again, we're jumping ahead for episodes, and, you know, we'll do a recap at the end of all this. But yeah, I mean, to me, there was at least about four, if not 5 other stories that are more probable than what happened here. All right, but to bring it back, and the reason I brought up the population of Cambridge and the police force. So here in Boston, our population is supposed to be around 680,000 or something like that, and then, you know, the employees of the Boston Police Department's around 3,000, but out of that, it's about, you know, 2,000 that are actually, like, you know, uniformed officers and whatnot. So I just say that you know, y'all, and it just seems to be yeah, there you go, thank you, yep. And so there it goes, like, you know, generally, y'all are a kinder, gentler city, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And so that I would think that, and your citizenry seems to be more involved in local politics as well. So I would think that it's more easy to get regulation there. And I worked with the CPRAB before. I studied it, of course. You know, I've known Joe Johnson for Jesus Christ, how many years, all that, blah, blah, blah. But I just say all that to say that I am super happy with what we got here, because in Boston, I did not know that it was ever going to pop. It even popped in New York. you know, whatever. But Boston was a tough nut to crack because of this union and the whole thing and the attitudes and whatnot. So I thank God that it happened here. And not for nothing, I'm also hopeful that these type of activities will also strengthen what the CPRAB is doing too, because we got, you know, all of these systems, I think, of accountability need to be updated. Everybody needs to be looking at their practices, I don't know, annually at least.
Absolutely. You can't sit on your laurels. Even if you feel like you're doing it right, there's new shit. There's always new shit that you got to keep up with.
A wise brother named Brother Charles Muhammad always used to say this thing, and he used to kill it. It was one of his slogans. I don't think he came up with it, but he said, the biggest room in the house is the room for improvement.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
All right, so let's continue on. So now we had just talked about the family and all that, and then we're going to tail end now. So now they had just talked about the family and all that, and then they went right into his graduation and all that. You know what I mean? 1991. And then it really went into, you know, started showing, you know, the involvement into the crack era, right? Sean had a real nice chain around his neck. You know what I mean? Had the Adidas hat on. You know what I mean? But he was talking about, and you know, I can definitely relate to this, but started off with getting, you know, the small pack and then doubling up, and you know, you at 20 and the 50 and that 50 and 100 and bing, bing, bing. And you know, so that, but you know, not no high level, you know, not on no level of, you know, you trying to be Scarface or nothing, but you know, this was for many of us in these young years, how we got our little money for clothes, or you know, zada-da-da. It was like, you know, I hate to use the old cliche, but everybody was doing it. You know what I mean? And it was just there and available. So boom. The next thing that they show is murals of the two streets, Humboldt, and they show graffiti at Intervale. Yeah. And right there where you always see that mural on Humboldt, for those who know, you know, I live, like, that's where I lived. You know, I could sit on my porch in the morning, I could throw a beer bottle and hit the mural. You know what I mean? Like, that's my block. And so the showing of that Humboldt and Intervale thing at that time, because between, you know, Humboldt, Intervale, Castlegate, like, you know, Heath Street, you know, academies, you know, there were a lot of little spots that was super active, and you know, it was just, you know, you had to be there to really understand how dramatic, traumatic, and all of this time was, how many people were getting killed at this time. I mean, and just how many people got strung out. I mean, not for nothing too, you know, in this story here, you know, Sean was not the only person who had a mother on crack. We had a whole generation of parents who were completely checked out because they was enthralled in the drugs and in their own level of escapism or whatnot. Some of whom, as we talked about, absentee fathers who actually physically escaped and bounced and went somewhere else. You dig? So there's a lot of that. And then it gets into the next real thing is him seeing, he's now locked up, of course, now, and him seeing the Sean Drumgold case. And that brings in the whole Rosemary Scapicchio thing, right? Now, if you peep their first interaction, and I definitely wanted to harp on this a little bit, was the letter, okay? Yo, you in jail. You know how many letters these brothers be writing to how many people? They might see an article and write a letter to that journalist. Please look into my case. They might see a lawyer and write a letter to that lawyer. Please look into my case. I got a stack of letters in storage from cats who was writing me, you know, for years. Okay? Like, this is a thing. And it is also, too, the art, lost art of letter writing. Because, see, now, us who are free, everything's so convenient and we're so very lazy. So, you know, we'll call somebody, we'll text them. An email is about the closest we come, but we don't really use formality in that. You know what I mean? But cats is writing letters to make their appeal, to get people on their side, to win them over. And you got to be persuasive with that pen. Okay? And it's funny too, because here's a dude who is called Stutter, but guess what? When you write a letter, ain't no stutter. Right? And now writes this letter that persuades her to at least pique her interest. Good for the white lady. She's honest and says, listen, well, first, just, I can't even touch this for like 18 months. I'm backed up. And then once I do get to it, there's no guarantee. And he says something that's almost biblical. I'll wait. You talk about patience. You locked up. And just to be like, yo, I'll wait. You know you innocent. I'll wait.
That was his last hope. Rosemary Scapicchio.
Think of how many letters that she got from people in jail, but she picked his.
She picked his, man.
That's once again, there you go. God again.
God again.
God again. Hey, because not for nothing too, we could all sit here and and lionize her and make her into a hero, but also too, she also gives no fucks. Okay, so she took that one, but the other ones was like, okay, boo. So those people will have a whole nother story to tell. Like, man, she ain't paid me no attention. She never even responded. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the fact that she picked this thing, she was guided there to it. Okay. So, and once again, the letter. Then it goes into the life of Rosemary in Brighton. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about her that I just know. When I used to work in Boston City Council back in the 90s, when I came back to Boston in like 1998, at the time, there was a lawyer guy. He was like the cool guy, cool Italian guy on the city council, played basketball a lot. His name was Paul Scapicchio. That's her brother-in-law. So she had married his brother. So I always knew her as just an upcoming, lawyer. She was getting it in. And, but I just knew her as, And any time she had a case, I would always, make mention of him, like, wow, she's kicking ass again. You know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. Boom. But if you see the part where it goes into her life, now you got the life of a white girl in Brighton, like sweet cake to us, but still projects. Right?
PJs.
Right, projects.
Right.
Okay. Hard scrabble family. Mama made her contribute to the tuition. That's hard scrabble.
That's
My
hard.
mama ain't mean that hard. That's hard. That's hard. All right. So one of them old thing, they had what she said, 7 kids.
Yep.
They
5
all
minutes to
did
shower.
the bathroom in a row by age, 5 minutes at a time. Billy got it last. Billy was introduced for men the cold shower. Go ahead, brother, please.
Yeah, so you on a roll, man, and you covered a lot of ground. But I want to roll back if I made to the point you made as far as that scene which depicted the crack era. You know what I'm saying? And you see him, he got the gold chain, and he's talking about that whole thing, and they show the graffiti on the wall, and you know what I'm saying, the different. But I think it's good for us to just as we see that, just to keep in mind that whole era was really orchestrated by our government. You know what I'm saying? That the whole crack era, right? Like the Iran-Contra scandal, that the CIA, now this is documented information, the CIA was involved with bringing crack cocaine into the ghettos of America, right? Not only crack cocaine, but then military grade guns. That's when we started seeing Uzis and, you know what I'm saying, all the high powered weapons and things of that nature, that we never used to see before. They never wanted the black man to have guns. I mean, they did a whole witch hunt on the Black Panther Party when they was advocating for black men to legally own guns. And that was just, you know what I'm saying, in the 70s. You know what I'm saying? So how we go from them, massacring and cleaning out the Black Panthers, that's in the 60s and the 70s, for advocating black men to have legal guns, but yet in the 80s and the 90s, now the black community is flooded with these high-powered weapons. All of this was orchestrated by our very own government. So to look at, again, the Sean Ellis story, man, and see how we have been consistently victimized by our government, and then when we think about that whole crack era, we know we all know brothers, and some of us might have been involved in making some of that money, off the crack era, but really we were the pawns and we were being used, and there was a whole industry of folks that was really making money off of us. And that is what we also see here with the police. So they flood the black community with this crack, and then the cops are running rampant, sticking us up, taking the product, flipping it, putting it back out there. So I mean, when you just think about that, and you mentioned about the addiction of some of the mothers, our people that became addicted to crack and crackhead, but when you take the totality of all this and understand that this wasn't just happening, this didn't just happen, right? That we were targeted and victimized at every level. I think it's something that we should not gloss over, and I just wanted to point that out, because it's further, it's like, man, at what point does the trauma, what I'm saying, the abuse, the oppression, and it's like oppression on top of oppression on top of oppression.
Now, Brother Randy, I mean, I totally agree, and that was that perfect storm where, it started. And the crazy thing is, it didn't just creep out from, say, the West Coast, and it made it over here like meth or one of those things. It happened in every city all at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like all these cities, it's almost like the 47, things that this guy was the informant for. It was all over the city. So crack came up in all the big cities all at once, and it was this thing. And initially, it was we get people addicted to it, and then the second byproduct was, all right, now we can put a whole bunch of people in jail because of it.
Right.
And then the guns, now that we'll get people to kill each other. And then to even double down on that was all right, we'll separate the charge for powder cocaine and crack cocaine and rock cocaine. And it was this whole thing. And I was a kid at the time, it's much the same as you guys were. And I watched a lot of my friends. I was kind of a bystander. They were my friends. I was still cool with them, but got into it. And then, watching families just go down the drain left and right. I grew up in the projects too, here in Cambridge though. And it was just watching people go down left and right for various different things. And then just the breakup of the family, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then dads would be in jail. And now mothers strung out, dads in jail, kids were trying to raise themselves, coming up with dumb ideas, and now they're all selling it. So everybody in the family line was affected and connected to this. It was crazy.
That goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the corruption. I mean, if you take it on the level that the CIA on down was involved, and you look at the corruption of the Boston police officers, the Boston police officers are just the peon foot soldiers. So it goes way beyond, and that's why even up to this day, they're still covering it up, because it's bigger than, this is a nationwide thing.
Not for nothing, if y'all are hip to this concept, because as you said, the peon foot soldiers and the higher up, they're doing the real dirt. If y'all know Roman generals or this, that, right? Okay, they go into a place, they pillage everything, they take all the spoils and whatnot, and then they tell all the regular men, go do what you will, have fun.
Yeah.
Get all the little, exactly, all the spoils that we didn't already want, because we already took the real good stuff.
That's right.
Now you get the scrap spoils. You get to run and ransack up in people's houses, rape a few women, probably a few animals. You know what I mean?
Impunity.
Exactly. And so that's what the police were. You get to live off of, you know, the scraps that fall off of the table here. So if you can bag up a few dope dealers here, and once again, look, this one bag of dope, let's say you catch somebody with a kilo. That one bag of dope might be worth like 3 times because once again, you got it from him, so he's arrested. Now you take it from him, you arrest him, you smack him around, you take his money, whatever. Boom. Then you resell it to a next person. Boom. And then hopefully you bag the other person that gets it on the other end. And it's like it's rotating.
And check this out too, right? Like, you know, the hood, right? The ghetto is like a franchise, right? You go to McDonald's, right? You're gonna see certain things. You're gonna see the golden arches, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna get burgers, you're gonna get fries. You know, every McDonald's, they have the same cups, the same straws, the same napkins, right? You go to every hood in America, every black community, and you have the same thing, right? The way this crack came in and the gang, it is not a coincidence, you know what I'm saying? It is by design, you know, and so again, there's so much to this documentary that we need to extract, right? To have this conversation, to shape, you know, public policy and to shape really how we move, right? Because another thing I'll say that I think is relevant here to that point is something I've been watching for the last maybe you know, close to 30 years now, and that is that every and you know, y'all bear witness, y'all let me know if this sounds familiar to you, but every year or two you'll see that there's a major drug raid, right? Where they say they locked up, you know, 15, 20, 40 dudes, you know, like when I first started paying attention to this was when they did my hood, right? They raided OP and they locked up 40 dudes, all my whole crew pretty much. I was already in the nation, praise be to Allah, but they swept up the whole crew, you know what I'm saying? And then a few years after that, you know what I'm saying, it was like they did Mission Hill. And then a few years after that, they did like JP. And then it was Interville, then it was Castlegate, then it was, you know, they did, you know, Lucerne, they did the Cape Verdean brothers.
And recently it was the Point, millions of dollars.
They did the Point. And every time they do these major raids, right? And they do them like at least once a year or once every other year. But one of the things that I listen to when they say this, we've been watching them for the last 5 years. So that means that when they raided one, they was already watching the other one. So what is that telling you? They letting this thing go on, right? Because when they do these big raids and sweeps, 80% of the cash that the police confiscate go back to the police department, right? So they're actually profiting from the drug sales and these gangs going on. This is why they can say, we was watching you for 5 years. So that means when you raided Orchard Park, you already knew Mission Hill was popping, but you let them go. You know, it's like you let the fish get bigger, so that, you know, by the time we come to raid you, now we're going to take your money, and we know that the next project is popping. And so this is a game that is being played on our community, and everybody's benefiting and profiting while we are being destroyed. So it's something that we got to pay attention to, and we got to bring an end to it.
So hey, Jake, if you're still online here, for those don't know, Jake is my guy, does a lot of the graphic design, web stuff with me, and a lot of the data and the data visualizations. I don't know if he's still on here, but if he's not, then I'll get.
Say what's up.
He's right.
Beautiful. So I'm thinking now maybe we do a timeline where we juxtapose this, the events of this documentary, right? We juxtapose it with, I just wrote down a couple things, but I want to know too, like, what was the hip hop music of the day? Because when you're talking about the high capacity guns and all that, you know, my 9mm go bang, and then I just remember everybody had 9mm.
Right.
I remember the first rap song I heard talking about that Mossberg pump. Everybody had to have the Mossberg pump. And then, of course, you had to have a trench coat to go with it. But, of course. And, you know, all these type of things, you know, but it seemed like, you know, even Chuck D, when he did My Uzi Weighs a Ton, which I know he didn't mean to promote no gun stuff. He was talking about his mind.
Right.
But that hit
was out there at the time. Yeah.
Bang.
Already.
So,
yo, all I got to say is, I don't know if you're about to come here with it more, But I know there's a lot of SKs and a lot of 30 clips out here. So that's all I
It
gotta
is.
say. It's crazy.
Banana clips.
Yeah. Okay. So then I was gonna say also too, the timeline of some of those early raids you was talking about, the targeting of, the early gangs or cliques or whatever they want to call them, right? And juxtapose all this with that, and then also too, where was Gross at this time? See, this question has been brought up before, but he was on the force thing. So at this time, was he just a regular patrolman? And if so, where was he? Did he know these people? Was he assigned with them?
What did he have to do to become the first black so-and-so?
What happened?
I said, what kind of dirt did he have to do to become the first black so-and-so?
Right. Or dirt that he may have had to look away from. So I don't know, but all I know is that an investigation beats a blank.
Well, we know he definitely looked away from this one, right?
But I'm saying, but he was there at the time. And in the story that I've heard, he was also a drug cop who later ended up running the gang unit at some point, whatever. So once again, I don't know his proximity to these people. Maybe these people were his friends too. I don't know. I have no problem asking. You know what I mean? But this is definitely something that is puzzling.
Hey, Jamal, you in raising those questions, you brought something to my mind, right? Because, there was a news article a couple of years ago that talked about the Boston Police Department that was targeting, right, black groups, right? They was targeting black, what was the name? How they labeled it? It was the black
extremists.
Black extremist group, right?
Yep.
Black extremist identity groups.
Yep.
And so this was being conducted. So now if the Boston Police Department was conducting surveillance, right, on black identity
extremists,
black identity extremists or whatever it was in Boston, right? Like, who you looking at?
Well, okay. Okay, listen. Here go another
It was black identity extremists. That was the way it's called. Black identity extremists, right?
So I know years ago, and I encourage y'all to do it too. Years ago, I did a whole FOIA on any records that Boston Police and any other law enforcement agency, BRIC and all that may have on me. They came back with a very nice letter. The ACLU helped me on this. They came back with a very nice letter that said, we have nothing on Jamarhl Crawford other than his Corey. And so then that's when I knew that was complete BS.
Right.
So that leads me to believe that means that what they do is, in order to not respond to that, they just keep the books open. So you're always under investigation. And that way they don't ever have to answer anything, because they're like, this matter is still currently under investigation. We're still checking this out, whatever. Because when they said they don't got nothing on me but the Corey, I know that's a vicious lie.
Yes, sir. So the irony, right, that we're looking at so much corruption, right, from law enforcement on all levels, right? Yet these are the very same ones that are now conducting surveillance and investigation on what they identify as black identity extremists and other groups, So it's just absurd, that this is what we're dealing with, and so just to make that point.
Not for nothing, let me add on this too. And oftentimes, the people who end up in that particular unit of intelligence are often the most controversial officers, who also then matriculate on outside of BPD to BRIC, Boston Regional Intelligence Center, which is like local CIA. They're always rewarded. I'll give you a great one. Y'all remember the young man who got harassed on his way, to go get his hair cut and all that, and that officer and blah, blah, blah. Well, that officer, they suspended him or whatever. So it looked like, they're taking some action. Then he ends up being a trainer, doing the training for Homeland. So it's like it's a diversion and then a reward and an award and a promotion and all this type of stuff. We got we got to look out for that. All right, so the timeline. All right, we was at the end of this anyway, because when I was going into the Rosemary thing, I was really at the end. And all the thing I was gonna say at the end of that is, when she laid that timeline out on the table, you know, that remind me of like wartime, war room type of stuff. When, you know, I like the fact of her organizational mind, right? And having that space to spread out and to bless and to put all them things together the way she did. So there was also something in her legal technique that I saw the way that she was doing timelining things out. The closest thing I've ever seen it like to that would be in art, when they do like storyboards for like movies or comics or something like that, where and you can move the panels around. Okay, no, he's not gonna die here. No, he'll die over here. All right, no, he'll, you know, all right, this is where he climbs the mountain. No, climb the mountain over here. Whatever, but having all those pieces moving as interchangeable pieces and being able to move that around, that is masterful work right there. And so that was really the end of that. And you know, and then I was gonna go back right to the point where you went to, that time of the graduation in 1991 and boom, 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 boom. I mean, you know.
Before you get off the timeline thing, I just dropped the link. But as I've been watching this, I've been taking notes because we attempted to put together the timeline for the mass police reform thing over the summer, just to show some of the context around the conversation around the history of what BPD has done and things like that. And so this was one of the incidents that's not even on the timeline because there's just not very much coverage. Like, I've been taking notes about the articles that they put out, those news series. Those aren't things that are like, the Globe is not making that readily available. And it's kind of crazy that they're not, because that's all, that information is as relevant now as it was, you know what I mean, in 1993. So
do you have access to the Globe archives?
I do not.
I'll give you my sign in. That's your problem.
But one of the things that I would love to do is like take some of the things that we're learning about either through this documentary or through the conversation that we're having afterwards, and just continue to add on to that document where we can put that whole story together of, this is everything that's happened in the order that it happened in, including when Gross got in office, when other folks got in office. And the ultimate vision for that was something a little bit more interactive, where we could do something like you were saying, Jamal, where folks could really separate those things out and say, I want to follow this along based on this things connected to this individual, or connected to this particular cop, or connected to this particular, you know, set of incidents that all led to, you know what I mean, the same sort of conclusions and stories. So I just shared that link in the hope that if any folks have anything they might want to add, you know, that's a living project, and we're still trying to figure out how to make it better and more useful and more informative for folks.
Yo, this timeline is crazy. The only thing that's not in here is Sean's case. I don't see it yet.
Yo, not for nothing, and not for nothing, Jamal. Like, if you see, because like, yo, for a lot of this time, I'm saying, this is, y'all seeing my secret weapon right here.
Oh yeah, this is crazy.
Bro, so Jake's a monster when it comes to this type of stuff, and you know, we just have to make more usage of the tools that we have available. You know, my brain, his brain, y'all's brains. You know, we throw it all together, and we got a hell of a gumbo. You know what I mean? So it's everything. Everyone, you know what they say. We can all add on. Period.
Yeah, this is serious.
Only thing I gotta say is on that timeline, my little homie just got killed last year by the police. He's 19 years old, so I just show you the relevancy of this shit. You know what I'm saying? Excuse my language, but
that's who? That's the other Jamal Ellaby?
Yes, sir.
All right, and y'all know Leonard Lee, Jamal brother Randy.
Yeah, I know Leonard.
So Leonard Lee witnessed that shooting that happened right outside of Leonard Lee's house.
Oh wow, I think I heard him talk about that.
Yeah, that's
he's
when
over.
Leonard
He's still
got all...
he's still executive director over the CAS Center, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know Leonard.
And that shook him to his core. Is what he begged that young man. He tried to intervene, and the whole he tells the whole story about it. It was a real. It's very traumatizing for him.
Yeah, he tells the story. He that's one of the stories he tells on when he was running the health commission. when he was on the health commission. Absolutely.
But there's also young brothers from that hood in that neighborhood. Crowd have to be specific. They said that they seen him and he busting and he wasn't the situation, whatever. But
yeah, we got work to do, folks. So I just want to take these final things, please. Anybody else who has not spoken already, who has something to say, please, we want to hear your voice. I damn near want to be insistent now. Folks who have not spoken, please say something. If it's not just hello, you're here, you're listening, you're paying attention, you got something to add on, you got a question, you got a comment, or you got a suggestion. Come on, folks. Somebody who ain't spoke before, somebody add on, please. We're gonna take a pause for a minute. I'm gonna pause for like 30 seconds and just let somebody come in here who has not spoken. Please, go. Don't make me do like the third grade teacher and call names.
All right, so I'll talk. My name is Rachel. I'm good. How are you? So what I wanted to say, I didn't see the 4th episode, so that's why I have not spoken. But I wanted to hear everyone's input and everything. But something that I did want to say was that I have the opportunity of working for a senator, and the masspolicereform.org that Jake and you guys have been putting together, I'm planning on sharing with people within the Senate because I've been studying it and just reading more about it, and it's very powerful. So yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to say because everyone was talking about it. So that's my plan.
Thank you so much. Are you comfortable saying which senator you work for?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Yeah. I work for Senator Jalen. So it's cool to hear. It's interesting to hear from a Cambridge police officer too. So yeah. More than
okay,
happy.
Jake, remember the other day when I was trying to tell you about the progressive white people that I had worked with in the state house, and I couldn't remember the other name?
Yes, sir.
Of the women, because we knew Brownsburger. We knew now I'm gonna forget the other name. Brownsburger, my buddy Jamie Eldridge.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was Cynthia Cream and Patricia Jalen. That's the one. Those were the 4 I was trying to remember.
Word. Bet.
All right. Now, let me ask you this for clarity because I screw things up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Who wrote the commission on the Department of Corrections? Was that Jalen or was that Cream?
Ooh, that might be before my time. So I'm coming up on a year.
Definitely before your time.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoever that was, and it's just because I have a brain fart right now, but whoever that was, it was either Cream or Jalen.
Mm-hmm.
I bit that. I took it and dismantled it, and I used that as the basis because I was trying to get the state to push a commission of policing based on that very commission on the Department of Corrections. That was at the time Department of Corrections. The scandals were ridiculous. We had a black man in the position of the commissioner, which we thought was a good thing, but he turned out to be, not so great. And there were all manner of suicides or the prisoners' abuse. COs were off the hook. Guards were showing up pregnant by inmates, and inmates were showing up pregnant by guards. It was crazy. So we got rid of it. And either way, whoever it was either Cream or Jalen that was the one that took it because nobody wanted to mess with the Department of Corrections. And the one that wrote the thing for a commission on the Department of Corrections. And that's what I used for the basis of commission on policing, which I hope you're sitting down. Surprise, surprise. Nobody was supportive of.
Jay, I can't find the initial legislation that created it, but there is a link for it on the state, the legislature's website where they have an address, and currently the Senate members are Brownsburger and Ryan C. Fatman. And
on the commission of the Department of Corrections.
Yep. Yep, DOC
Okay.
and Sheriff's Department funding, and then Michael S. Day and Timothy R. Whelan on the House.
And so you know why you probably can't find the original? Because like everything else in the State House, when they put the original through, it gets chopped the hell up, and then they come back, you know, the fourth version, whatever, and then now that's the new version of whatever she initially did. I still have it on one of my hard drives, so I'll share that. We could chop. I have that and the other proposal as well, but you know, we'll go forward. But thank you for tuning in. Please, yes, spread the gospel amongst the State House.
Definitely.
You know. Well, I guess you're not in there too much now, and you know, but certainly email and Zoom calls and all that. Please spread the gospel.
Right.
We need more recruits.
Right, and the only reason I was saying that was because like you guys are bringing so much to light in this website, and I think it's just really important that everyone needs to see it more. Like it's a great resource. So that's
great.
You wanted someone to talk, so I jumped in.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. Rachel, let me ask you this: How old are you, if you don't mind?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm 25.
Okay, I'm 49.
Mm-hmm.
And we have varying ages here. One thing that I do think is important as well is for you yourself personally, but also in the capacity of your job and the people at the State House also too, is one thing you may notice about this group here and you know, from the websites and all the information that we put out. And if you could tell from me, you know, I like to have fun. We could have a little jokes and da-da-da-da, but we're a very serious and focused bunch.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing a bunch of yelling and screaming and shouting at the sky. We actually have documents and proposals and plans and facts, and we're talking about legislation. And so that's a big difference. So one of the big things I would love for y'all to focus on is don't get distracted by sometimes what might be the noisiest in the room. The noisiest in the room is not always, you know, don't follow the rah-rah shish boom bah. Focus on the quality, and I swear to God, at least me and all the other people I know will never lead you astray. Anything that we coming with is going to be documented and fact-based and research, and you know, da-da-da-da. And we're not looking to do a whole bunch of sloganeering and all that. We want actual results.
I've connected with Darrell a lot, and he keeps preaching that. So I'm happy to hear. Yes. I'm excited to connect.
So you've met John the Baptist.
Is that what you call Darrell?
Yeah, well, he's John the Baptist, and we have Jakesis.
Oh, God.
Jakesis is like, I'm gonna commission a new portrait of the fake Jesus, and I'm gonna use Jake.
I thought that was Skinny Thor.
Skinny Thor too. Listen, I got angles. I'm his manager.
That's wonderful.
Jakesis.
But yeah, so for real though, we like to have fun, and it's a familial bond and all that. But you know, at the same time, you know, we are deathly serious, and these things that we put forth, you know, in the form of the databases or the reports or you know whatever. This is, you know, this is real deal stuff, and you know, the more the merrier. And I'm glad that you have, you know, been introduced to some of the folks, and yes, the more the merrier.
Yeah. So I just wanted to jump in and say that. But yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Of course.
Anybody else want to take the leap of faith? Please, somebody else who has not said anything this evening. Please, somebody else. Rachel did it. She came out okay. Somebody. Come on, y'all. You're making me work too hard. Nobody else wants to say nothing who hasn't spoken before, please.
Hi.
Thank you, sister.
This is my first time joining the group, and I just have to look at the movie and see what's going on before I make any comment. So far, I'm enjoying it, and it's very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. What episode are you on already?
I just started tonight looking at it, and my cousin, she hit me up with this morning, but she didn't tell me what it was about. And when I went on with you all, this is what it was about. So I like it, and I don't know how often you all meet, but I'll try to stay with you all because it's something that's very dear to me. And because my brother was a victim of police brutality in the early 60s.
Who's your brother?
His name was Willie Tyrone Porter.
I've heard that name before.
Report during the time Martin Luther King came to Boston about police brutality. Reverend Woods. I remember, I'm old. I'm like 70 years old.
No, that name is very familiar. I've heard that name before.
Sister, are you like you're on the Facebook and you're on the Zoom? Obviously, do you have an email?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you send? Are you on the chat here? Do you see the chat in the Zoom?
Wait a minute. I don't know how to operate it that good. I keep telling y'all I'm old.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We're gonna take care of it the other way. If you don't mind, would you mind saying your no. I'm going to give you my email.
Okay.
Okay. My email is my name. If you could see my name on the screen, Jamarhl Crawford. As long as you spell it like that.
Okay.
Yep. My email is Jamarhl.Crawford. You just got to put a dot in the middle. Jamarhl.Crawford at gmail.com.
Okay. I got that.
Please send me, and I just put it in the chat, so everybody should be able to see the chat. But please send, and not anybody else who has information about another case, please send me that information about your brother's case. We'll research it. We'll include it in our database.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was brutalized back in the 60s, and the cops stopped on his handcuffed him, threw him in the paddy wagon, stomped on his arm, broke the arm, and when my mother went to pick him up down at the old station 9, it's over where RCC is now. Yep. Or am I going back to talking to you guys?
No.
Okay. Well, when she got ready to they didn't want to let him out because he was a minor. You know, he was under 18, but he was big for his size and tall. And her lawyer came, got him out, but she had to promise the police department that she would take him to Boston City Hospital rather than any other hospital before they would let him out. So she made the promise, but the lawyer told her to take him to Peter Ben Brigham Hospital, and they documented the footprint of, the shoe print of the officer's shoe on his arm, because his arm was broken and everything. They met with the police commissioner and everything, but what they did, I forgot the policeman's name. But,
was it the Italian man, like Longato or something?
I can't remember. This was back in the 60s, so I was like 14 years old, around 13, 14 years old. But I know that they once they found out, because we were black and that we had a lawyer, and the lawyer himself, they kind of like had the policeman to turn everything over to his wife, put everything in his wife's name in case we came for his food. And the thing is, they knew my brother. They knew him from the time he was a kid, but what happened was he was a chubby kid because we lived like 2 doors from Station 9. So they knew him coming up, but then when he became a teenager, he lost all that chubbiness and just went tall instead of wide. So they apologized because they've known him so long. So what you all are talking about is very interesting to me because it goes back a long time of things that they have done to people.
Now, is your brother still with us?
No, he passed in the 80s.
Well, God
But I
bless. My condolences.
the rest of his life.
Say his name once again. Robert
No, Willie Tyrone Porter.
Willie Tyrone Porter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, sis, we want to investigate that. Thank you, brother Jamal. Put it in the chat too. Thank you. Not for nothing too. I should probably do this. Jake, if you could, while I rant again. Jake, if you could look up on YouTube right quick on my YouTube page, that documentary Black Cop, the documentary that was given to me by Mr. Billy Celeste. Let's just put that link in there too. When you,
yeah, that was an excellent documentary.
I mean, and the only thing that's changed is the hairstyles.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
In the cars.
Right. So sis, when I said the Italian commissioner, because he might have been the commissioner at that time. I wonder if that's gonna ring a bell. But everybody should see this thing anyway, just because it depicts a time period and it depicts like black officers coming on the force. Actually, Officer Armstead is featured prominently in it. He's also featured prominently in this documentary as well later on. I can't wait till we get to that episode. Woo-wee. I need to try to find his son. But I
think his son is no longer with us.
Steven?
No,
yeah.
Ray Jr.
Oh, okay. I know I thought one of the Armstead, one of the people in the Armstead link to this case was deceased.
Wow. I don't know nothing. Hey, listen, and
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
I mean, we need to investigate that too. And I don't want to be funny, but you know, if they were shot, in a similar style, then, and I don't know how many years apart or whatever, but interesting. Thank you, Jake, for that link. So anybody too, because we're about to wind down now, we about to get off this, but anybody too, that link is in there. So y'all should check that link out. That's Black Cop. Yeah, it came out in 1974 on Channel 5. It was like their own little documentary series featuring the black cops here. Billy Celeste was pretty much the star, who was well, he would later become the highest ranking black person prior to Commissioner Gross. Now he was the deputy police commissioner, and it just depicts, you're gonna see a lot of the same elements. When you see that, it's like it's the same thing.
This is
but
so
all right,
random.
so
This is so random. Before we go, Jamal, sticking with episode 4 and the I guess arrests or incarcerations of the 3 officers. I'm just curious whether or not, like, were other police officers testifying against them, or was this like an internal investigation? How did that happen?
Well, I don't, I don't really know, because they, they don't really disclose a lot of that internal thing. But clearly, there were a lot of police out there who knew it was popping with these guys. Clearly, some of these had said some things, but I don't know how much on statement. The only one that I'm aware of who actually went and did a statement was Brazil. You know what I mean? In terms of that level of statement. So, as it goes on, if, I got to refresh my memory if I'm missing anybody else. But as far as I know, the only one who actually gave any kind of testimony in a legal capacity outside of just, gossip is Brazil. Okay, so we're getting news too. Armstead Jr. is deceased. Oh yeah, Rage. See, boy, listen, don't get me started now. Look, oh boy, I'll probably be up tonight. Don't get me started. Oh boy. Listen. Also too, in the chat now too, Jake, also, I asked him to put up a case of deadly force, which we were also talking about. That's the story of Stefana, Sunshine's uncle, who Sunshine, who's been commenting in here. Her uncle also too was one of the earliest cases. What year was that again? Was it 75? What year was that?
Yep, it was January 1975.
Yep, January 75. And they killed her uncle, which became a whole big thing, a book and a movie. And
yeah, the movie's great movie.
Great movie. I mean, not for nothing too. They lionize the white people too much in it for me. You know what I mean? So, it becomes a story of the heroic lawyer and his family who, against all odds, blah, blah, blah.
The dude from
But
Rambo.
hold up, though. Can I just, since we saying that, I just have to say that the heroism of the O'Donnell family should be highlighted and focused, because when our family attempted to get Black community leadership to assist and represent, including the NAACP and others, no one would take the case as far as a civil lawsuit. And, it was the diligence of my aunt, similar to what you were mentioning about Sean, writing his letter to Rosemary Scapiccio. My aunt basically walked into his office on a whim, him being an ex-police officer himself and knowing, the system, listened to her. And I'm sure he had other people coming to him. He took the case. So and I'm not saying that he was the only hero, because quite honestly, if y'all want to know the truth, my sister, who was 9 years old, and her girlfriend were the heroes of that story, because had they not been talking to each other from the project windows across the way, my uncle's death would have just been swept under the rug.
If you don't mind, what was his name, and what's the name of the piece that was done on it?
Oh, and since you're Whytee and you're a police officer in Cambridge, my uncle's case itself began in Cambridge as a wrongful identification, basically, of a robbery that had transpired in Cambridge, and it went across the wires that they crossed over the bridge, and the vehicle that was identified somehow, some way, I don't know if this is true, but back in the day, license plates probably were different only by one number or whatever. So it was a robbery that stemmed in Cambridge that, resulted in my uncle's death. And his name was James Bowden.
James Bowden? B-O-L-D-E-N?
No, B-O-W-D-E-N.
Oh, Bowden. Okay. All right. Thank you. And in the name of the is it a documentary or is it a movie?
It's a movie. It's called A Case of Deadly Force.
Yeah, Whytee, I don't know if you see the chat right now.
Right.
Okay, but if you see the chat, we got the links all up in there. And actually, what was that actor's name? Richard Crenna, dude who played Rambo's mentor.
Rambo's corporal. Yeah.
Yeah. He played the lawyer. And what was that lawyer's name? Larry O'Donnell.
Lawrence O'Donnell, and his son, which is the O'Donnell of MSNBC, was the writer of the book that resulted in the movie.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I just remember when I was coming up, the one name that sticks in my head, and I haven't seen much about it since then, but I just remember it because I remember it, is Levi Hart.
Yeah, that's in the chronology in that chat. Levi Hart, Elijah Page, James Bowden.
So one of the things that we do, I have on one of the websites we got is the shotbypolice.blackstonian.org, and that's a list, of a bunch of them. And it's based on everything that we know We created that to combat the narrative that nothing happens here. We're good. We're not like Chicago or LA or Detroit or Baltimore or Philly. Pick one. Boston, we're different. And not just Boston, but Boston and surrounding areas. So this list is shot by police in Boston and beyond. So it includes some other cases and so on and so forth. But that's all on there. Yes, Levi Hart, Donald Johnson. I remember that was a big one when I was a kid. He had a little crush on a little summer camp counselor or whatever, and he's trying to press his friends, and they was gonna go to the you know, whatever amusement park or whatever. He ends up stealing a Greyhound bus, and they lit that bus up like a doggone action movie.
I remember
they lit that bus. I don't know how many bullets in there, but it was over 100, and they killed that boy. And then that was you know, so many vicious times I could think of in Boston. I'll finish that thought. The mother of that young boy, Donald Johnson, then went on a popular show in Boston at the time. I want to say it was called People Are Talking, and then swell guy, not a racist bone in his body, Dapper O'Neil. Man, reamed this lady. Her kid wasn't even cold in the ground, and he was like, "Your kid," everybody cussed her out, called them all sorts of animals, and you know, it was a crazy racial time. And I just want to say that that's really been the majority of my life here. So once again, this is the other thing, you know, the documentary that we're focusing on here now. Sean Ellis is one story. That's a story of a wrongful conviction. We also got stories of people who was killed. We also got people who disappeared. We also got, if y'all remember too, y'all remember the string of black women that was just dead. Bodies used to get found up in Franklin Park and stuff, cut up, beheaded, burned, all sorts of crazy stuff. When I was a kid, you know, was coming up. So the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and as the sister has now given testimony to, the 60s, and you know, so this has been a problem that has persisted over decades.
I just want to bring up to the relevancy. 2015, I was spit on and kicked in the face by 20 police officers. So yeah, this is relevant.
Was that Boston police?
Nah, that's why I didn't talk about it too much, but it was Rhode Island. Close enough though.
Okay. Yeah, no doubt. And that also goes to show a fact that this is an everywhere problem, despite the fact where folks might try to say, oh, it doesn't happen here. Au contraire, mon frere, it happens everywhere. It's everywhere. Small town, rural, agricultural community, big metropolitan city, it does not matter. And not for nothing too. Also, I gotta say, while black people do often get the crappy end of the stick, we are also not the only ones to get the crappy end of the stick, right? A lot of people, poor people get it. Occasional, you know, poor white guy gets it or whatever, or Mexicans get it, whatever, you know. So what I'm saying, police are out of control.
I have a question.
In too many situations and too many places.
I have a question towards that though. How many of these people that were black that was shot on that shotbypolice.com website were actually given, their families were given any money or anything back? I forgot the proper word because I'm just, you know, going.
Oh yeah, no, that's great question, but easy question. Very few. So I think first of all, you got to notice about who I call Dirty Dan Conley. Okay, Dan Conley, who I also worked with on the Boston City Council. He was a city councilor first. Then he left city council, he became a DA. He continued in the long legacy of foolishness and effery that was before him from Newman Flanagan, then Ralph Martin, and then Dan Conley, okay? Which was a rubber stamp for all sorts of police shenanigans, okay? And so Dan Conley, who was the DA for 16 years, never once in his career ever found a cop guilty of any sorts of wrongdoing, okay? Except one case. One case. Come on, you're giving up my punchlines.
I was guessing.
Don't be guessing out loud. So yes, it was a situation where a guy was shot up under, like, guy was trying to, you know, hide from the cop or whatever, and like got up underneath a car, and the cop shot. The bullet kind of ricocheted, you know, off of the thing, and, you know, shot the dude under the car, whatever. And there's varying different stories of that, where, you know, how that happened and whatnot. But they invented the dude's dead. Okay, it happened to be a black cop, Officer Sean West. Sean West is the first cop in the history of Dan Conley, and the only cop in the history of Dan Conley to get found guilty of any wrongdoing. And this is the part you don't know. The city of Boston later settled with that family and paid that family for killing their loved one. Okay, how much is the loss of your loved one worth? They gave that family $75,000. $75,000.
Well, I can answer that question. My family did and was the first ever in the country against any law enforcement department to receive a civil award from a police department, but it was not like immediate after the trial, but it was almost, I believe, 900,000 back, and we had gone through a couple of different mayors, you know, and then it was awarded. But the trial went on, it seemed like forever. But that's one that I know of.
To answer your question, sort of in the Broadway, Darrell, and the specifics for folks who are interested are in the timelines and also on the Shot by Police website. But generally what people tend to do, or what the city tends to do, is if it's a white family, they'll resolve it very quickly and with a lot of money. So for example, and I think it was in the 70s, somebody mentioned Levi Hart, but there was a bunch of cases around that time of young black boys getting killed by the police, and literally, like, they also shot and killed a young white dude, and in very similar circumstances. And they had settled with that family, and the officer was suspended, and a whole bunch of things happened, while a case that had happened earlier was still, nothing was happening. The investigation was sitting nowhere. The case was sitting nowhere. So that was kind of the story, that if you see the pattern that shows up over and over again, is if it's a white family, they're pretty quick to find justice and resolution, and it tends to be a more generous form of that, both in, you know, financial terms and also substantive terms in terms of punishment and things like that. If it's a black family, and there are a lot more cases where it's black families in our database, there have been about 3 people killed in the last 40 years by the Boston police, as opposed to 40 people of color. So that kind of puts it all there, right there for you.
And also too, when the white people are killed, it's generally clearly accidental. What I like to say is that seldom are white people killed by bullets, like actual bullets that are meant to kill, lead bullets, bang, bang, pow, pow. Generally, when they're killed, it's some extemporaneous thing, like in this case, the young white girl, Victoria Snellgrove, killed at the Red Sox game. But she was killed by a pepper spray pellet that even the people who made the actual device didn't know was lethal. But it just so happened that that pellet happened to hit her right at the perfect spot in the eye, went right up in the soft part of her eye and hit her brain, and she died. So, you know, that's clearly, in my view, you know, they didn't even know that weapon could kill, right? The other one, he had, you know, some respiratory issues, and so he asphyxiated out, and they didn't render him proper help and stuff like that. But in general, you know, when it's us, it's just bang, bang, pow, pow, you're dead, right? So, you know, real bullets, real guns, shoot. All right. So we're losing people now. We're losing me too. It's 9:45. It's my bedtime. All right. All right, y'all. Let's get off of this. Let me end this as I usually do, end all these things. So, you know, thank you for everybody for your participation. First of all, everybody, you know, be great. I hope everyone had a great day today. You know, continue on and have a great night. Do something great. Tell somebody you love them. Better yet, show somebody some love. show some love to a youth or elder. As always, push past the pain to the power. As always, please choose righteousness over ratchetness. And as always, please don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. And now, since we have lost Minister Randy, I believe at this time, right? Minister Randy checked out, right? So, Brother Jamarhl, would you like to close us out in prayer?
Absolutely, it would be my honor. Please position yourself in the form of prayer that is most comfortable for you. In the name of the true and living God, the one God, regardless to land, language, or label, we give thanks for your universal principles, freedom, justice, and equality. That is a birthright of every living thing. We ask that you continue to bless this group to be able to receive this information from the documentary and present ourselves as living sacrifices to help understand and to heal a hurting community behind this very critical and needed subject to be discussed. So we thank you for allowing us to gather, and in the name of all your prophets and all of your sages, messengers, brothers and sisters, we say amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I will see y'all tomorrow night. Please tell a friend. Once again, tomorrow we're watching episode 5. And, episode 5, watch it at 6. If you've already watched it, fine. If you'd like to watch it again, please do that. But then we'll have the discussion again at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Remember, it's on Zoom, not on Facebook. Spread the word. God bless all y'all. Good night. And have a great one.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.